The owl hovers silently over the desert, talons flexed in anticipation. But something is off. Instead of swooping toward the scuttling rodent below, it hesitates, its body suspended in an awkward pause. The prey twitches nervously, unaware of the predator looming above, and yet the owl does not commit. Every instinct that should drive it forward is muted, overridden by an inexplicable hesitation that tightens the chest and quickens the heartbeat of anyone watching from a distance. A faint rustle of wind carries the shifting grains of sand, the only sound in an otherwise oppressive silence. The air is dry and thin, brushing against feathers and talons, with a subtle friction that almost seems to warn the owl. Its wings adjust minutely, struggling to maintain balance, as if the bird questions its own flight. A shadow stretches across the dune, elongating and compressing as the moonlight dances on undulating sand. The desert, normally a canvas of opportunity and danger, now feels like a stage for uncertainty. The owl's eyes, normally sharp and decisive, dart erratically between faint movements, the glint of whiskers, a twitch of a tail, the subtle pressure of a paw against loose sand. Every detail is magnified, each micro-movement a signal that the owl cannot fully interpret. Below, the prey freezes, instinctively sensing danger that should be audible, but is absent in this expanse. Tiny claws dig into the sand as it evaluates escape routes, unaware that the hesitation above is not mercy, but a misalignment of instinct. The owl flinches subtly, a rapid flick of the head, but does not descend. The desert itself seems to lean in, holding its breath, a silent witness to the breakdown of a sequence that should be automatic. The moon casts a silver glow on the sand ripples, illuminating every grain, every shadow, every potential trajectory. The owl's chest rises and falls in uneven rhythm wings, quivering with micro-adjustments that suggest conflict between muscle memory and a strange internal pause. Each heartbeat echoes in the mind of the observer, an amplified drum in the empty vastness. The prey shifts, slightly unaware of the timing and consequences of the predator's unusual inaction. Dust rises in barely perceptible currents, dancing in streaks of moonlight, highlighting the subtle tension in the air. The desert in all its emptiness feels suffocating, compressing time and expectation into a single, elongated moment. A distant wind stirs, brushing sand against the owl's feathers, and the bird tilts slightly, a delicate recalibration that fails to resolve the indecision. Its eyes track the smallest motion, a flicker in the prey's whiskers, a shift in the dune's shadow, a pebble rolling in the faint incline. The hesitation persists, as if the bird questions a choice it should not question, caught between opportunity and some intangible doubt. The desert amplifies the effect. In open space, nothing is hidden, and yet nothing seems certain. The owl drifts slightly, talons grazing the air with uncommitted intent. Its wings flex, then still creating a rhythm that feels interrupted, unnatural. The prey remains frozen, caught in an unspoken tension it does not comprehend. In this moment, the desert is not a playground of survival, but a crucible of indecision. Micro-movements in the sand's shadows, shifting imperceptibly. The cold clarity of moonlight all conspire to magnify the owl's pause. A single twitch of a feather could change the outcome, but nothing shifts. And then, as if time itself holds its breath, the owl suspends all forward motion, lingering in that fragile balance. The prey, the sand, the wind, and the shadows wait alongside it, a tableau of tension and unresolved anticipation. The desert hums quietly, every particle of dust a silent witness. The owl's hesitation becomes the center of the world, a singular anomaly in the rhythm of instinct. For a moment, the laws of survival seem suspended, leaving only a question hanging in the cool night air: why? When all instincts demand action, does it wait? The owl finally adjusts its wings and drifts toward a low ridge, talons lightly brushing the sand as it lands with silent precision. Its plumage, mottled with shades of tawny and beige, blends seamlessly with the rocky terrain, a natural camouflage honed over countless generations. A faint scar across the left wing catches the moonlight evidence of a past encounter that nearly ended its journey. Another subtle mark near the base of the beak hints at a collision with a thorned shrub during a misjudged landing. These small imperfections are more than just physical. They are badges of survival identifiers of this particular individual, a solitary traveler navigating a harsh and unforgiving environment. Every movement the owl makes is deliberate. Its gaze sweeps the dunes with acute focus, each feather subtly adjusting to shifts in wind and light. Despite its size, there is a grace to every tilt of the head, every flick of the tail, every micro-adjustment of the talons. Yet beneath this composed exterior lies a tension that belies instinct. It hesitates, momentarily stalled in situations where every other owl of its species would act without question. The hesitation is brief, almost imperceptible, yet it carries consequences that ripple through every decision it will make for the night. And this hesitation raises a singular central question. Why does this owl, a predator defined by precision and instinct, falter when opportunity is clear? In an environment that demands absolute decisiveness, where prey survival hinges on split-second reactions, this anomaly sets the stage for the narrative that will unfold. What compels a creature whose life has always been dictated by instinct to pause when action is imperative? The answer is not simple, nor will it be revealed conclusively. It is a thread of inquiry that will weave through every action, every choice, and every encounter that follows. Observers might know the owl's habits. The subtle pause before launching from a dune crest, the slight hesitation when selecting a glide path toward potential prey, the rare moments it refrains from immediate pursuit. These behaviors form the foundation of the central question. Each hesitation is a deviation from the predictable, a spark of curiosity that challenges assumptions about survival and instinct. The owl's past encounters, the minor injuries it carries, the environment's unpredictability, all contribute to this subtle anomaly, creating a tension between natural expectation and actual behavior. As the night deepens, the owl's awareness extends beyond the immediate prey. The desert landscape, vast and silent, presents countless variables: shifting sand, hidden rocks, subtle changes in wind direction, the faint tracks of other predators or prey. It evaluates each element with care, but the hesitation persists. Even in moments of potential gain, the owl pauses, a temporary suspension of instinct that will influence its fate. The desert magnifies every motion, every decision, turning the slightest pause into a consequential event. The promise of the story is simple, yet compelling. Throughout this narrative, the owl's choices and their consequences will be observed in exacting detail. By the conclusion, viewers will understand the stakes and the cost of hesitation, even if the ultimate reason remains elusive. Each movement, each silent glide, each unmade decision contributes to the unfolding exploration of the central question. How does survival proceed when instinct falters, and what is the price of that pause? The owl shifts slightly on the ridge wings, folding eyes, scanning the faint ripples of sand in the moonlight. Its breath is steady, but measured talons gripping the coarse surface with subtle tension. Every nuance of posture communicates an individual shaped by circumstance, environment, and past trials. Its hesitation is not random. It is a precise divergence from expectation, a mystery to be unpacked through the night's unfolding events. The desert, indifferent and unyielding, bears witness to this anomaly, framing it against the stark reality that one misstep can change everything. And so the story begins. A single predator, solitary and vulnerable, stands at the threshold of choices that will test instinct, patience, and the very definition of survival. The central question hovers over every decision. Why does this individual falter where its species would not? The night is long, and the desert holds its breath, awaiting the answers that may never fully arrive. Yet through observation, anticipation, and the silent consequences of every movement, the viewer is invited into a journey where instinct and hesitation collide and where the cost of a pause will be revealed in full measure. The owl had not always been solitary. In its earlier days, it had moved within the familiar rhythm of a small group, learning the subtle dances of the dunes, the timing of hunts, and the cues that govern survival. But one fateful encounter changed that. A sudden sandstorm, unanticipated and fierce, swept across their usual hunting grounds. Visibility dropped to almost nothing, and prey disappeared into the shifting patterns of sand and shadow. In the chaos, the owl's companions scattered their calls, lost in the whistling wind. By the time the storm subsided, the individual found itself alone, its group gone, leaving only the stark expanse of the desert and a sense of dislocation that lingered in every flight. This isolation left a mark not on the feathers, but on behavior. Where instinct once operated seamlessly within the confidence of a group owl, every decision carried the weight of consequence. The owl began to hesitate in moments that had previously demanded instant action. Its wings adjusted more carefully, landing spots were chosen with hyper-awareness, and the margin for error seemed intolerably small. The desert, already unforgiving, became a crucible in which every misstep risked exposure to predators, miscalculations, or missed opportunities for sustenance. Past certainty had been replaced with acute vigilance, and yet the pause that emerged was more than prudence. It was an anomaly that would define the owl's approach to life. Another memory etched into the owl's instincts was the encounter with a larger predator months prior. While attempting a routine descent toward a rodent, a fox had emerged from an unexpected crevice, forcing an abrupt retreat. The collision had left a subtle scar along the left wing, a physical reminder that survival was never guaranteed. Though healed, the injury lingered in the owl's perception of risk. Micro-adjustments in flight became exaggerated, each potential landing scrutinized with unnatural care. This cautiousness, born from a past threat, contributed to the hesitation that now appeared in hunting behavior. The prey, once a straightforward calculation, became an ambiguous challenge demanding constant evaluation. A third influence on behavior was the failure during the last full moon. The owl had identified a promising target, a rodent exposed on open sand. But something in the environment had misled its perception. A sudden shift in wind scattered the scent, and the subtle play of shadows obscured the prey's movement. Hesitation ensued too late to capitalize, and the opportunity was lost. The owl had been forced to retreat, empty-taloned, learning that even minor disruptions in the desert's rhythm could have outsized consequences. That night it understood that instinct alone might not suffice. Adaptation and constant recalibration were essential. These three experiences, the scattering of companions, the encounter with a predator, and the lost opportunity under moonlight, coalesced into a behavioral pattern that defied expectation. The owl no longer moved solely according to instinct. Its actions now included micro-pauses, assessments, and subtle corrections that other individuals of its species might bypass. It was as if the desert had inscribed caution into its very being, creating an individual whose choices were tempered by history as much as by present conditions. The scars, both visible and invisible, became defining traits. Observers, if they could penetrate the anonymity of night, would see a creature shaped not only by evolution, but by personal history. Each flight carried echoes of past failures and near misses. Each landing reflected the memory of injuries and lost opportunities. The hesitation that occasionally marked its hunting sequences was not weakness. It was the accumulated imprint of survival under extreme conditions. In a landscape that demanded decisiveness, these subtle divergences from expectation were anomalies that hinted at a complex interplay between instinct experience and environmental unpredictability. The desert itself reinforced these lessons. Shifting sands erased tracks within hours. Temperature swings challenged stamina, and unseen predators lurked beneath the moonlit dunes. The owl's past encounters had taught it that one misstep could cascade into a series of failures. Its backstory, though largely invisible to others, informed every choice: the timing of a glide, the distance maintained from potential threats, the calculation of prey escape paths. This personal history was inseparable from the environmental pressures, and together they produced the unique behavioral pattern observed in the present. In solitude, the owl's narrative unfolded in repetition and reflection. Each night became an iteration of past lessons, each decision a rehearsal of previous mistakes or successes. The behavioral anomaly, the pause before action, was now contextually bound to memory. While instinct provided the skeleton of behavior, experience filled in the nuances, creating a predator who, in moments where others might act impulsively, hesitated to assess, measure, and recalibrate. The desert demanded this attentiveness. The owl had learned that survival was not simply a function of action, but of timing, observation, and judicious application of instinct, tempered by memory. Thus, the backstory of this solitary owl was inseparable from its present identity. The past failures, injuries, and isolations shaped a creature whose pauses, hesitations, and careful deliberations were both adaptive and enigmatic. They explained why the central question, the anomaly in behavior, persisted. Instinct had been modified by experience, creating a narrative in which every choice carried psychological weight and every hesitation resonated with the cost of prior survival. In the silent, sprawling desert, the owl's history set the stage for the night's unfolding drama, a continuous negotiation between instinct, memory, and environment. The desert does not forgive error. Every dune, every crevice, every subtle contour of sand is a challenge that must be interpreted and respected. The owl navigates this space with acute awareness: the slope of a ridge, the angle of a dune in moonlight, and the placement of sparse shrubs all dictate potential hunting paths and hiding spots. Even the faintest gust of wind carries information: the shifting of grains, the subtle scattering of scent, and the distortion of sound across the open expanse. These environmental cues define the rules of survival as immutable and exacting as any law, and breaking them can result in immediate consequences. Temperature swings dictate rhythm. Nights plummet to a sharp, penetrating cold that seeps into feathers, reducing agility and dulling reflexes. The desert, silent and expansive, magnifies every tremor of movement, every micro-disturbance. Shadows shift unpredictably as moonlight glances across rippled sand, sometimes obscuring prey, sometimes revealing a predator's own presence. The owl must account for these variables, measuring distance, trajectory, and timing with precision. Each glide, each landing, each descent is a negotiation with the terrain and its latent dangers. Beyond terrain, other desert inhabitants enforce the laws silently. Rodents move with acute awareness, their own adaptations finely tuned to escape the unexpected. Snakes lurking beneath the sand, or rocks, strike with lethal precision. Larger predators like foxes observe from hidden vantage points, exploiting moments of miscalculation. The owl must calculate not only its prey's response, but the presence of rivals, all within the same spatial frame. Environmental cues are layered, overlapping, and at times deceptive. A shadow may signal opportunity, or threat. A movement may indicate prey or predator. Success hinges on the accurate interpretation of these signs and the timing of response. Even light plays a critical role in the desert's invisible rulebook. Moonlight casts elongated shadows that can distort perception, misalign depth cues, and create illusions of movement where none exist. The owl's eyes, adapted to low light, discern subtleties invisible to less attuned observers. Yet the potential for misjudgment remains. Each beam and shadow must be factored into calculations of glide, attack, or retreat. Mistaking a reflection for motion, a ripple for presence, can have consequences disproportionate to the apparent error, a principle that the desert enforces with merciless precision. The timing of action is dictated by multiple converging factors: wind velocity, temperature gradients, prey availability, and territorial markers, create a dynamic matrix that defines opportunity. A single misalignment, an overzealous dive, a misjudged angle, or a hesitation at the wrong moment can result in failed hunts or exposure to rival predators. These conditions teach the owl that instinct alone is insufficient. It must integrate environmental law into each decision, adjusting continuously to maintain alignment with survival's exacting code. Seasonal variations further complicate this calculus. During periods of scarce prey or extreme heat, choices are constrained. Every energy expenditure carries greater weight. The desert imposes scarcity, and scarcity amplifies the consequences of hesitation or misjudgment. Even experienced individuals honed by years of practice must constantly reassess the landscape, recalibrate movements, and anticipate outcomes based on subtle environmental feedback. In this realm, certainty is ephemeral, and adaptation is not optional. It is mandatory. The desert also embeds danger in its silence. Sudden drops, hidden crevices, and unstable sand ridges create potential pitfalls. The owl interprets these hazards as part of its hunting strategy, timing, glides to avoid exposure, and maintaining altitude to ensure rapid escape routes. The shadows themselves are ambiguous, sometimes signaling prey, sometimes concealing threats. Mistiming the descent or miscalculating distance can result in collision or misfire, a physical reminder of the unforgiving environment. Predation pressure reinforces these laws. Other hunters, foxes, snakes, opportunistic birds exploit the same micro-movements and visual cues. The owl's success depends not just on capturing prey, but on navigating the complex web of predators and competitors. Each step, each glide is a negotiation with both the environment and the other participants in the desert ecosystem. The cost of miscalculation is immediate and tangible: failed hunt, wasted energy, or worse, injury. As the owl moves through the dunes, it internalizes these lessons, translating terrain, light, wind, and shadow into actionable decisions. Every motion is calibrated against these invisible laws. Every pause, glide, and pivot reflects an understanding of what the desert allows and what it punishes. The owl's hesitation, seen by an observer as anomaly, is in part a product of this rigorous environmental law, a manifestation of a predator, negotiating the precise, silent rules of survival. By the end of the night, one fact becomes clear in this desert. Error is not tolerated, and instinct is only one component of survival. The law of the environment is absolute. Every movement carries weight, every choice bears consequence. And in this crucible, the owl learns that hesitation is a decision in itself, a gamble with stakes defined by the harsh, unforgiving rules of the dunes. The owl pauses atop a ridge, talons lightly gripping the coarse sand. Below, a small cluster of rodents emerges unaware and exposed a seemingly effortless opportunity for a successful hunt. The moonlight glints across their fur, highlighting every movement, every twitch of a tail, every subtle adjustment as they forage. The environment offers an unusually clear path for the predator. A straight glide could secure the catch without struggle. Yet the owl hesitates, suspended in mid-air wings, flexing minutely, as if questioning the sequence that instinct dictates. The first hypothesis forms in the mind of an observer. Perhaps the owl senses something beyond immediate perception. A hidden threat invisible to casual observation. Perhaps the faint shadow at the edge of a dune is more than sand. It could be another predator waiting to exploit a misstep. The owl's hesitation might then be interpreted as caution, a survival mechanism evolved over countless nights in a merciless landscape. Every micro-movement, every feather adjustment is a calculation of risk and reward, an instinctual balancing act where certainty is impossible. The second hypothesis is darker and more enigmatic. The owl's hesitation is a cognitive anomaly, a deviation from instinctual behavior itself. Something internal disrupts the automatic sequence that should propel it toward prey. Muscles pause when they should contract, wings flex without commitment, and talons remain extended but idle. The pause elongates, unnaturally creating tension, not only in the physical space, but in the narrative of survival itself. For the observer, the moment his gripping instinct has failed, or at least faltered, leaving a question hanging over the night air. The prey remain oblivious, their subtle movements carrying no clue of the predator's internal conflict. Whiskers twitch, ears rotate to catch ambient noise, paws shift over uneven sand, all routine behaviors that under different circumstances would trigger an immediate strike. The owl calculates, reassesses, then pauses again. Each second of hesitation amplifies suspense. The desert itself seems to lean forward, awaiting the decision that never fully materializes. Shadows stretch and distort across the dunes, the shifting moonlight painting patterns that both obscure and reveal opportunity. In the owl's brief inaction, the observer notices the tension etched into every movement. Breath hitches wings, flex in micro-adjustments. Tail feathers twitch, all subtle indicators of the internal conflict that has overridden automatic responses. The surrounding silence magnifies each motion. Dust, disturbed by a slight adjustment, swirls in the faint lunar glow, highlighting the frozen tableau of predator and prey action, deferred by an anomaly that is as puzzling as it is consequential. Two paths now present themselves. One is the obvious trajectory, the glide that would intercept the exposed rodent and ensure success. The other is a pause, a non-decision, a subtle drift that maintains a safe distance but forsakes immediate gain. Either choice carries weight. Action could yield a meal, but might expose the owl to unseen danger, while inaction preserves safety, but leaves the opportunity unclaimed. Both outcomes are tinged with uncertainty, and the owl's hesitation transforms a simple hunt into a complex psychological negotiation. Time stretches elongated by the owl's suspension. The desert amplifies the effect, each shifting shadow and ripple of sand seeming to carry significance. A faint gust shifts particles across the ridge, subtly altering perception. And yet the owl remains poised, caught between immediate reward and the unspoken, intangible rules it feels compelled to honor. The two hypotheses coexist: unresolved, external threat or internal deviation, survival strategy or cognitive anomaly. The answer remains opaque, intensifying the tension for both predator and observer. A sudden micro-movement among the prey, a tail flick that should trigger instinctual strike, passes without reaction. The owl's gaze tracks it, muscles ready but uncommitted. Each moment reinforces the anomaly, the disruption of natural rhythm, the deviation from expectation, the pause that has now become the defining feature of this encounter. The desert in different yet exacting frames. This hesitation against a backdrop of opportunity and risk, emphasizing the psychological weight of even a single choice. And so the first anomaly leaves the owl suspended in a delicate balance between instinct and hesitation, opportunity and restraint, action and non-action. The desert itself seems to hold its breath, shadows and wind converging to magnify the moment. The central question reverberates. Why, in a situation where instinct would demand certainty, does this owl hesitate? The scene closes with uncertainty, unresolved, an invitation to ponder the consequences of a choice deferred. The owl's hesitation had consequences almost immediately. In the brief pause atop the dune, other predators seized the moment. A fox, silent and calculating, emerged from a low rocky ridge, its movements precise, eyes glinting in the moonlight. The owl's opportunity to strike the exposed rodent vanished in an instant, replaced by a new calculation: avoidance. Every instinct screamed to act, to take flight, but the prior pause had already cost energy, exposure, and a measurable advantage. The desert is unforgiving. What seems like a minor delay is magnified in its relentless theater of survival. Energy expenditure became the first toll. The owl's muscles, coiled and tense during hesitation, now demanded release. It shifted, adjusted wing angles, and executed rapid movements to escape potential detection from the fox. Yet each exertion carries weight in an environment where resources are scarce. The loss of a single meal, the prey that would have been caught, translates into measurable deficit influencing stamina, hunting efficiency, and future decision-making. Scarcity in the desert is absolute, and the owl now bears a debt owed to survival itself. The second consequence manifests in spatial vulnerability. By delaying action, the owl exposed its position subtly. Shadows had shifted the outline of its perched body, betrayed by moonlight, and the fox's awareness heightened. Micro-movements that were once unnoticed now broadcast risk. Every subsequent glide, every descent toward a new target, must be measured against this exposure. The owl, usually confident in the security provided by camouflage and stealth, finds that hesitation has subtly altered the landscape of threat and opportunity. A further ripple of consequences extends to prey behavior. Rodents that initially appeared oblivious now detect the owl's presence through imperceptible movements. Slight shifts in sand, subtle changes in light reflection from feathers, a shadow stretching across the ridge. Their responses become erratic, sudden freezes, panicked skitters, and burrow retreats. The owl's hesitation has inadvertently altered the behavior of multiple creatures, cascading through the micro-ecosystem in ways that amplify tension and unpredictability. What once seemed straightforward now requires recalibration. The owl itself faces physiological stress. Muscles remain tensed for longer than typical predation sequences. Heart rate fluctuates under silent anticipation. The cost of this extended vigilance is cumulative. Each misaligned motion, each micro-adjustment drains energy and heightens cognitive load. Sleep patterns, hunting rhythm, and reaction time are subtly affected as the owl moves into subsequent hunting sequences. In a desert where every joule of energy matters, the invisible toll of hesitation is profound. As the night progresses, the owl confronts additional environmental pressures. The wind shifts unpredictably, erasing tracks and creating false visual cues, forcing recalibration of glides and descents. Temperature drops make muscles stiffen slightly, reducing precision. Dust swirls obscure lines of sight. In this compounded complexity, the owl must integrate lessons from its prior hesitation with new environmental variables. Each movement is now doubly significant, informed by both prior misstep and immediate conditions. The desert transforms into a living puzzle, and the cost of inaction resonates across every layer of survival strategy. Predation pressure continues to mount. Other nocturnal hunters observing and interpreting the same subtle cues operate in parallel. A second fox moves cautiously toward a ridge, while a snake slithers silently along a sand channel. The owl's hesitation has not only delayed action, but also shifted the relative advantage toward competitors. Every choice from this point on is filtered through the lens of prior error. The desert enforces memory, and prior hesitation dictates future constraints. By the time the owl re-engages with potential prey, opportunities are fewer and choices more constrained. Micro-adjustments in flight timing and strike precision become critical. Each new attempt to secure sustenance carries the psychological weight of previous loss, creating a pattern where hesitation feeds into stress, influencing instinctual calculations and reaction timing. The owl is forced into a delicate balancing act decisively, yet remain acutely aware of the compounded risks imposed by its earlier pause. Cumulatively, the consequences extend beyond immediate survival. Energy deficits, increased exposure to predators, altered prey behavior, and heightened physiological stress create a chain reaction. The desert magnifies these outcomes, and the owl must navigate this compounded risk landscape with precise attention to environmental cues, micro-movements, and shadows. Each decision is a negotiation with past, present, and potential outcomes. And the cost of hesitation echoes through every facet of its nocturnal existence. The night reaches its midpoint, and the owl's prior indecision casts a long shadow over subsequent choices. Mistakes are now amplified. What was once a single anomaly is now part of a pattern informing both the owl's strategy and and the unfolding tension of the desert tableau. It must reconcile instinct with learned caution, balancing immediate necessity against potential threat, all while operating in silence and near total darkness. Finally, the mini cliffhanger emerges as the owl aligns for another potential strike. It senses the residual effects of its earlier pause. Energy is slightly depleted. Prey is more alert, competitors closer, and the desert remains unyielding. The sequence closes with a palpable tension. Any subsequent choice carries the weight of compounded consequence. The narrative reinforces that in this environment, hesitation is not without cost, and survival is as much about decision timing as skill. The owl moves cautiously along the dune crest. Muscles tense, talons gripping the shifting sand with delicate precision. The desert is silent, yet the tension is palpable. Every flicker of shadow, every subtle ripple in the sand feels laden with meaning. Just as the owl adjusts its glide path toward a faint movement below it, catches a scent, a faint, unusual trace carried on the wind. The aroma is unfamiliar, almost imperceptible, yet distinct enough to disrupt the rhythm of instinct. The owl pauses, head tilting, scanning the terrain, eyes narrowing against the subtle distortion of moonlight over the dunes. At first, the movement seems ordinary. The flicker of whiskers, a shadow shifting across a ridge, a slight tremor in the sand. But something about the pattern is off. The owl senses a presence that does not conform to the established rules of the desert night, a variable that has not been accounted for. The micro-movements are deliberate, yet too precise, almost unnatural. The prey it has tracked seems alert in a way previously unseen. Muscles twitch in anticipation, tail flicks convey awareness beyond the owl's expectation. A deeper awareness intrudes. This is not the normal rhythm of desert life, and the owl must adjust rapidly. Then the evidence becomes visible. A human silhouette appears partially concealed by a rocky outcrop observing from a distance. The owl's vision, adapted to low light, registers the subtle contrast, the incongruity in movement, that sets the figure apart from the desert's usual residents. The scent, previously mysterious, now makes sense, foreign, intrusive, a variable that disrupts the established patterns. The owl recalibrates instinct and perception, accounting for this unanticipated element in its environment. The presence of an external observer, silent, yet present, introduces a new layer of complexity to survival, a reminder that the desert is not only inhabited by prey and predators, but occasionally intruded upon by unknown agents. Simultaneously, the owl detects traces of its former competitor, a fox it had eluded hours earlier. The predator's presence is subtle, a disturbed patch of sand, a shadow moving across a distant dune, a slight rustle in the underbrush. The owl notes these micro-signals with the precision born of experience, overlaying them on the unfamiliar human variable. The desert's rules are intact, but the combination of known and unknown factors forces a re-evaluation of strategy. Actions that would have been automatic now require deliberation, and hesitation, already part of the owl's behavioral pattern, deepens. A subtle shift occurs in the prey below. It senses the layered threats, the deviation from normal patterns, and pauses frozen in an uncanny stillness. The owl interprets this anomaly, calculating trajectory's velocity and the probability of success under the new conditions. Every micro-movement of feathers, every flicker of talons, is influenced by a synthesis of memory, instinct, and observation. The desert becomes a labyrinth of signals, shadows, and scents, each element amplified by the owl's heightened awareness and the unexpected presence of these anomalies. As the night progresses, the owl adjusts. Flight paths, hovers above potential prey with caution, and monitors subtle environmental changes, shifting sand, intermittent gusts of wind, and slight temperature variations. Its hunting sequence is now intertwined with the cognitive challenge of assessing not only prey, but also external agents. The previous hesitation, once an anomaly, now appears justified under the compounded pressure of unknown variables. Instinct alone is insufficient. Cognition and memory must integrate rapidly with sensory input. The owl's perception is tested further when a second unusual element emerges, a faint, unfamiliar scent, possibly from another human or a predator previously unseen in this territory. Shadows flicker in unexpected ways, and the desert landscape, once predictable in its rhythm, becomes a complex matrix of threats and opportunities. The owl's decision-making is strained, and every pause carries weight. Every movement has consequence, and the observer perceives a predator adapting under extreme cognitive and environmental pressure. Through this sequence, the audience's understanding of the owl's behavior is transformed. What once appeared as mere hesitation now reveals itself as a nuanced response to complex, overlapping threats. The narrative pivots. Hesitation is no longer simply a deviation from instinct. It is an adaptive response, a survival strategy under circumstances that defy simple analysis. The desert has shifted from a predictable stage to a dynamic, unpredictable theater, and the owl's behavior illuminates the interplay between instinct, environment, and unforeseen variables. The owl moves cautiously along the undulating dunes, muscles coiled wings flexing with silent precision. The desert night stretches endlessly cold and merciless. Each shadow a potential threat, each micro-movement in the sand a possible hazard. The moon casts a faint silver glow over the terrain, revealing subtle ridges and depressions, but the visibility is deceptive. The owl must rely entirely on its heightened perception, micro-movements, faint traces of scent, subtle distortions in shadows. The environment is silent, yet laden with danger, a crucible in which every decision carries weight. Hours pass with minimal reward. The owl's talons occasionally disturb the loose sand, generating faint tremors that ripple through the immediate area. Prey movements are infrequent, unpredictable, and highly cautious. Rodents and lizards emerge only to retreat swiftly at the slightest indication of a predator. The owl hovers, gliding with cautious deliberation, wings adjusting minutely to maintain balance in the shifting desert terrain. Each pause and glide is measured a silent negotiation with the environment that tests stamina, focus, and patience. Temperature plummets further. Cold air sinks into every feather, and the owl's muscles tense to maintain lift. Energy expenditure is carefully moderated. Each movement is deliberate to avoid exhaustion. Hunger gnaws subtly but persistently, a reminder that sustenance has not been secured for hours. The owl's mind, guided by instinct and experience, calculates trajectories and potential targets while accounting for fatigue. Each decision now carries compounded significance. A misjudged flight or failed glide could result in wasted energy or missed opportunities that may not recur. The desert itself seems to amplify tension. Wind shifts sporadically, stirring dust that partially obscures visibility and alters scent trails. Shadows flicker in unpredictable patterns, creating optical illusions that force the owl to reassess trajectories constantly. Micro-movements in the sand, the tremor of a rodent's paw, or the displacement of a pebble must be interpreted accurately, as false signals could compromise the hunt or reveal the owl's presence to competitors. The desert is both playground and adversary, and its silent rules demand near-perfect awareness and adaptation. Throughout the long night, the owl encounters intermittent prey. Small rodents emerge cautiously, yet the owl's hesitation and ingrained behavior from prior experiences delays action. Each potential strike is calculated, weighed against environmental variables, residual stress, and prior mistakes. The desert magnifies these moments, stretching them into elongated sequences of anticipation and uncertainty. Time becomes fluid. The owl's awareness is heightened, every second laden with consequence. Physiological stress intensifies. Muscles remain flexed for prolonged periods, heart rate fluctuates under sustained vigilance, and the owl's energy reserves dwindle gradually. Hunger increases the pressure, but the mental load of continuous assessment outweighs raw instinct. Each decision is now filtered through the accumulated weight of past errors, and the constant vigilance demanded by the environment. The desert is relentless. A single misjudgment can cascade into exhaustion, exposure, or failure. Shadows deepen, and intermittent gusts of wind shift sand across the dunes. The owl's perception must continuously recalibrate. Every ripple, every flicker, every subtle vibration in the sand is analyzed. Prey behavior is erratic, influenced by the same environmental pressures, and the owl must anticipate both natural and behavioral variables simultaneously. The tension escalates as the night progresses, and the owl's internal rhythm is taxed by the need for constant assessment, decision-making, and micro-adjustment. Hours accumulate, the desert remains indifferent, and the owl's isolation compounds psychological pressure. The previous anomaly hesitation intertwines with fatigue, hunger, and environmental complexity. Each potential prey, each shifting shadow is now interpreted with both caution and calculation. Actions that would have been automatic now require micro-decisions. Even the act of gliding toward a potential target involves consideration of wind-light prey behavior and prior consequences. The night is a relentless teacher, and every movement reflects the owl's attempt to reconcile instinct with experience under extreme conditions. Throughout the long night, the owl is aware not only of prey and environmental variables, but also of the invisible presence of competitors, foxes, snakes, or other desert inhabitants whose tracks or faint scent trails might intersect the owl's path. The predator must integrate multiple layers of information using perception and memory to guide action. Mistakes could result in confrontation, wasted energy, or loss of opportunity, each carrying amplified significance due to the prolonged duration of exposure. As the night approaches its zenith, the owl executes careful glides, hovering and adjusting posture continuously, talons flexing and retracting, wings subtly altering to account for wind gusts. Micro-movements in prey shadows, shifting across dunes, and faint environmental cues guide every decision. The desert stretches endlessly around it, indifferent yet demanding testing focus, patience, and precision. The owl's behavior reflects cumulative experience, learned hesitation, and the demands of survival under extreme conditions. By the final hours before dawn, the long night has intensified both physical and cognitive strain. The owl's energy is diminished, yet focus remains calibrated by instinct and prior experience. Every choice carries the amplified weight of prior indecision and environmental pressure. The silence of the desert, punctuated by occasional movement or wind, maintains suspense. The observer perceives a predator negotiating a complex, high-stakes landscape, where instinct, calculation, and fatigue intersect a solitary figure, navigating the oppressive challenge of survival. The owl senses the night shifting toward dawn, the desert's temperature dropping, shadows stretching long across uneven sand. Its muscles are fatigued wings, weighted with hours of calculated glides and tense hovering. Hunger gnaws persistently. Yet the owl hesitates once more, confronted with a choice: engage with prey that has now become wary and alert, or retreat to conserve dwindling energy. The moonlight reflects off uneven dunes, casting misleading shadows that distort distance and movement. Each option is fraught with risk and instinct. Previously a guide now feels clouded by accumulated fatigue and cognitive strain. Beneath the ridge, a group of rodents has scattered their behavior, unpredictable after hours of cautious movement. One lingers near a sparse shrub, frozen, yet alert to even the faintest motion. A misjudged approach could push the prey into hiding or alert a nearby competitor, foxes, snakes, or another owl hunting silently in the distance. The owl hovers, talons flexed, wings trembling slightly, and calculates the probabilities, the effort required for capture, the likelihood of success, and the potential exposure to danger. Time stretches, each microsecond magnified into an eternity of tension. The first choice is to strike immediately, committing fully to a glide that may yield sustenance, but risks revealing the owl's position to hidden rivals. Muscles contract, wings angle to talons extend, and the desert itself seems to hold its breath. The second choice is to retreat, maintaining stealth and conserving energy, yet leaving the prey unclaimed and hunger unabated. Neither option offers certainty. Both carry consequences. Hesitation, once a minor anomaly, now amplifies the stakes. Each decision reverberates across the hours of the night, influencing remaining energy reserves, predator-prey dynamics, and spatial positioning in a landscape already stretched to its limits. As the owl initiates the glide toward the prey, shadows and sand betray misleading cues. The rodent reacts in sudden, unpredictable bursts, testing the owl's perception and timing. A subtle gust of wind shifts sand along the path, altering trajectory and requiring instantaneous correction. Talons miss the intended target by mere centimeters, and the owl must adjust mid-air, wings flexing to correct the descent. Every movement is measured, yet the margin for error is almost non-existent. The desert amplifies the tension, transforming a routine hunt into a high-stakes negotiation with survival itself. Simultaneously, environmental variables compound the challenge. A distant fox emerges briefly onto the dune, its presence unnoticed by the owl, until the movement catches the corner of its eye. Shadows distort under uneven moonlight, and the owl must decide: continue pursuit, risk exposure, or divert to maintain safety. Energy levels are now critical. Every second of flight depletes reserves that cannot be replenished until prey is secured. Hunger presses insistently, yet instinct is conflicted by the accumulated stress of the long night. The owl adjusts hovering talons, flexing wings, trembling as it recalibrates. It executes a second dive toward the prey, now partially concealed under the shrub. The rodent darts unexpectedly, slipping into a small depression between sand ridges. The owl lands lightly nearby, wings folding with precision, eyes locked on the subtle micro-movements that now dictate survival. Each choice carries amplified consequence. Misalignment could mean energy wasted, missed opportunity, or increased exposure. The tension of prior hesitation lingers a shadow over the final attempt at capture. Energy and cognitive fatigue reach their peak. Muscle control is tested as the owl executes rapid adjustments, correcting for shifting sand, erratic prey, and environmental distortion. Time perception is altered. Each second feels elongated, each movement amplified in significance. The desert seems indifferent, yet the consequences of miscalculation are absolute. The owl must navigate the complex matrix of prey behavior, environmental variables, and competitors' presence in a sequence where no choice is without compromise. At the pinnacle of the encounter, the owl makes a final commitment. It strikes decisively, talons, extended wings, angled for balance, timing measured to perfection. The prey is caught, yet the effort carries cost: energy depleted to near critical levels, exposure heightened, and a nearby fox alerted to the presence of a predator in its territory. The desert enforces its impartial rules. Success in one domain translates into vulnerability in another. Instinct has guided action, but the consequences are multifaceted, highlighting the impossibility of a perfect decision. The owl rests briefly, wings folding against fatigued muscles, gaze sweeping the horizon. The prey is secured, yet survival has come at a price. Energy is diminished, potential threats remain, and the desert continues to impose constraints with indifferent precision. The choice to act, to hesitate, or to retreat has compounded into a series of consequences that shape the remainder of the night. The climax is not triumphant. It is measured, nuanced, and tethered to the inexorable logic of survival in a harsh environment. The desert remains indifferent, shadows stretching and contracting with the approaching dawn. The owl, solitary and wary, reflects through action rather than cognition, the cumulative weight of decision, hesitation, and consequence. No victory is glorified, no heroism is proclaimed. Survival is defined by precision, adaptation, and the acceptance of compromise. The climax leaves the observer aware of the delicate balance between choice and outcome, and the impossibility of perfect action in a world governed by relentless and impartial forces. The first light of dawn stretches across the desert, casting long, pale shadows over the rippled dunes. The owl perches on a low ridge, feathers slightly ruffled, wings folded with measured precision. The hunt has concluded, yet the night's events leave more questions than answers. Hunger has been momentarily sated, but the accumulated fatigue, exposure, and environmental vigilance remain etched into every movement and micro-adjustment of the body. The desert is indifferent, yet the consequences of the owl's choices linger in every grain of sand, every shadow, every subtle ripple disturbed by its presence. The cost of hesitation is evident. Energy has been depleted, prey secured only after multiple calculated attempts, and the owl has exposed itself to additional risk from competing predators. Every movement, every pause, and every calculated decision throughout the night has compounded into a series of outcomes that are tangible and inescapable. The desert itself enforces this impartial accounting. It does not reward skill alone, nor does it forgive miscalculation. The balance of survival is exacting, and even small anomalies in behavior create ripple effects that extend beyond a single encounter. Observers, if present, would see a creature simultaneously triumphant and vulnerable. The prey has been captured, yet the owl's territory is subtly altered by the traces left behind, disturbed sand, faint imprints, and the micro shifts in shadows that reveal its presence to others. Competitors are aware prey is wary, and the environment continues to challenge every subsequent decision. The owl's actions, though necessary for immediate survival, have consequences that extend in both space and time, reinforcing the narrative that every choice carries weight and that hesitation, indecision, and error are integral to the calculus of life. Yet the central question remains unresolved. Why did the owl hesitate at critical moments, and what does this deviation from instinct reveal about survival in extreme environments? The night's events provide data, evidence, and observable outcomes. Yet the underlying cause of behavioral anomaly remains elusive. Was the hesitation a learned response to prior trauma, an adaptive strategy for energy conservation, or a cognitive deviation that introduces unpredictability into the rhythm of hunting? The desert offers no answers, only the continued presence of challenges and the persistent necessity of decision-making under pressure. Multiple interpretations exist. One possibility is that the owl's hesitation is an adaptive mechanism, a deliberate, unconscious strategy to reduce risk in a complex environment where sensory cues are imperfect. Another is that it is an unintended deviation, a flaw, magnified by accumulated stress fatigue and prior failures. Both perspectives are plausible, and neither can be confirmed definitively. The narrative leaves space for contemplation. Hesitation is simultaneously a potential flaw and a potential strategy, a duality that underscores the ambiguity of survival in unpredictable, high-stakes contexts. The consequences of the night extend beyond immediate physiological needs. Energy management, spatial positioning, and prey availability are all affected by prior hesitation, and these factors will influence the owl's subsequent hunting sequences, interactions with competitors, and positioning in its territory. Even as the desert shifts with the rising sun, the imprints of previous action, both successful and flawed, shape future opportunity. The owl's choices are now embedded in the landscape, an invisible record of decision-making under extreme environmental pressures. As the day progresses, the desert quiets, and subtle thermal currents begin to rise from the dunes. The owl adjusts its posture, feathers ruffling to regulate temperature, talons shifting to maintain grip. It surveys the terrain with deliberate care, aware that the residual effects of prior decisions may influence prey behavior, competitor positioning, and environmental feedback. The landscape is unchanged, yet perception of risk and opportunity has shifted. Micro-movements in the sand, the angle of light, and the presence of distant competitors now carry amplified significance. The narrative closes not with resolution, but with a continuum of possibilities. The central question, why did the owl hesitate, and what does it reveal about survival, remains open. 2 or 3 interpretations coexist, none confirmed yet, all credible within the framework of extreme survival in the desert. The viewer is invited to contemplate the implications. Hesitation may signify a calculated strategy, a cognitive anomaly, or the inevitable tension between instinct and environmental complexity. Survival. It becomes clear as neither absolute nor easily defined. It is contingent, relational, and always in flux. The owl finally lifts into the early morning sky, gliding with cautious grace over dunes now softened by daylight. The desert stretches endlessly beneath indifference, silent and exacting. Every grain of sand, every shadow, every hidden crevice reflects the consequences of the night's choices. The story leaves the observer with a persistent question in a world dictated by instinct, environment, and risk. Is hesitation a flaw to be corrected, a strategy to be understood, or simply an inherent aspect of survival that defies resolution?